What would you do if you found a helpless, abandoned puppy on the street? For Emma, a kind-hearted barista struggling to make ends meet, the choice was simple. She took it home, not knowing this small act of kindness would change her life forever. But here's the twist. This wasn't just any stray dog. Its owner was a powerful billionaire who had been searching for his lost companion for weeks. And when he finally tracked her down, what happened next was something neither of them could have ever predicted. If you've ever believed that fate has a way of bringing people together, then buckle up, because this story will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, destiny, and second chances. Let's be real. How many times have you scrolled through YouTube, searching for that one video that actually means something? That one story that doesn't just waste your time but leaves you feeling inspired, emotional, or even a little jealous of how life can change in an instant. That's exactly why you're here. You didn't click on this video by accident. You clicked because, deep down, you want to believe in those rare, unbelievable moments when ordinary people stumble into extraordinary lives. Maybe you've even imagined it happening to you. What if you were the one who rescued the right dog, met the right person, or got swept into a world you never saw coming? Well, today, I'm giving you that escape. This isn't just another feel-good story. It's proof that sometimes, the smallest decisions lead to the biggest rewards. Now, I know what you're thinking. Asterisk. Okay, but how does a random barista end up catching a billionaire's attention just by rescuing a dog? Asterisk, trust me, I get it. If I were watching this, I'd be skeptical too. But here's the deal. I'm not going to drag this out with pointless filler or fake suspense. By the end of this video, you will get the full story. You'll find out who this billionaire really is, why his dog was abandoned in the first place, and most importantly, how Emma's life took a wild turn she never saw coming. But here's the catch. You have to stick around, because the moment you think you've figured it out, the story flips on its head. Picture this, a rainy evening, a dimly lit alley, and a shivering golden retriever with a collar but no tags. Emma wasn't looking for a pet, she could barely afford her rent, but something about those sad, pleading eyes broke her resolve. She took the dog home, named him Lucky, and for the first time in years, felt like she had a real companion. Meanwhile, miles away in a penthouse overlooking the city, a man was offering a six-figure reward for his missing dog. Not because it was some prized purebred, but because that dog was the last connection he had to someone he loved. And when security footage led him to a small coffee shop where Emma worked, the look on his face wasn't anger, it was shock. Because this wasn't just about the dog anymore. This was about her. So, what happens when a billionaire walks into a barista's life unannounced? Does he thank her and leave? Does he throw money at her and disappear? Or does he do something so unexpected, so personal, that it leaves Emma questioning every choice she's ever made? Here's a hint. The moment he looked into her eyes, he realized, this wasn't just about the dog. This was about destiny. And if you think you know where this is going, trust me, you don't. But you're about to find out. Don't go anywhere. Emma had always been the kind of person who believed in small acts of kindness, even when life hadn't been particularly kind to her. Working double shifts at the cafe, barely scraping by, she still found a way to smile at strangers and drop spare change into donation jars. So when she stumbled upon that soaked, trembling golden retriever huddled under a park bench, there was no question. She had to help. What she didn't know was that this dog, this Lucky, as she'd named him, carried a secret that would unravel the carefully guarded life of one of the most powerful men in the city. The billionaire, Alexander Graves, wasn't just some faceless tycoon. He was a man shrouded in mystery, a figure the media chased but never truly captured. His fortune was built on tech empires and private ventures, but his personal life was a locked vault. And the only key? That dog. For Alexander, Lucky wasn't just a pet. He was the last living connection to his late sister, the one person who had ever truly understood him. When Lucky vanished, Alexander didn't just post reward flyers. He unleashed a private investigation that scoured every corner of the city. Security footage, witness accounts, even underground pet trafficking rings. Nothing was off limits. And then finally a break. A grainy video from a convenience store near Emma's apartment showed a young woman with a golden retriever, her gentle hands brushing mud from his fur as she led him inside. Something about the way she cared for the dog, the tenderness in her movements, struck Alexander in a way he couldn't explain. This wasn't just about retrieving his property. This was about her. Who was she? Why did she take the dog in? And why did the sight of her make his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years? Meanwhile, Emma had no idea she was being watched. To her, Lucky was just a sweet, goofy companion who made her tiny apartment feel less lonely. But strange things started happening. A black SUV idling outside her work, a sudden surge of high-end customers at the cafe who seemed more interested in her than their coffee, and then the phone calls. Hang-ups. No caller ID. At first, she brushed it off as paranoia, but when a sleek, unfamiliar car pulled up as she walked Lucky one evening, her instincts screamed at her to run. The window rolled down, and the man inside wasn't some hired thug. He was polished, intimidating, with eyes that held a storm of unspoken emotions. "That's my dog," he said, his voice low but leaving no room for argument. Emma's grip on the leash tightened. This wasn't how she'd imagined this moment. Where was the grateful owner? The tearful reunion? This man didn't seem relieved, he seemed dangerous. But Alexander wasn't the only one with secrets. As he dug deeper into Emma's life, his investigators uncovered something unexpected. Her past wasn't as simple as it seemed. An old family debt, a vanished father, and a name that rang bells in the very circles Alexander had spent years avoiding. Was it possible she'd known exactly whose dog she'd taken? Or was fate playing a crueler game, tying them together in ways neither could have anticipated? The more Alexander learned, the more the lines blurred between suspicion and fascination. And Emma? She was starting to realize Lucky wasn't the only one being hunted. Whoever this billionaire was, he wasn't just after his dog. He was after answers. And the truth, when it finally came out, would force both of them to confront the ghosts they'd been running from. The tension coiled tighter with every passing day. Alexander's cold, calculated world was cracking under the weight of emotions he'd buried long ago. Emma's quiet life was spiraling into something she couldn't control. And between them? A dog who'd brought them together for reasons neither understood yet. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just a story about a lost pet. This was about two broken paths colliding, about wealth and power crashing into vulnerability and resilience. And the biggest question of all? What happens when the billionaire gets more than he bargained for? Because Alexander Graves didn't do messy. He didn't do unpredictable. And Emma? She was both. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched Lucky's leash, her pulse roaring in her ears as the billionaire's piercing gaze locked onto hers. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension, a silent battle of wills where neither wanted to back down. Alexander Graves had expected gratitude, perhaps a quick exchange of money before disappearing back into his gilded world, but the fire in Emma's eyes stopped him cold. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't swayed by the aura of power that made others fold. Instead, she stood her ground, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Prove he's yours," she challenged, and in that moment, Alexander realized with unsettling clarity that this woman was unlike anyone he'd ever met. What Emma didn't know was that Alexander had already proven it, to himself. The microchip scan, the vet records, even Lucky's excited whimper when he'd caught his owner's scent, it was all irrefutable. But instead of shutting her down with cold facts, he hesitated. Because the deeper truth was, he wanted her to fight. It stirred something long buried inside him, a thrill he hadn't felt since before the money, the empire, the carefully constructed walls. Meanwhile, his security team lurked just out of sight, watching, waiting for his signal. They'd been instructed to retrieve the dog by any means necessary, but now? Now their boss was breaking protocol, stepping into the rain without an umbrella, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles as he moved closer to Emma. "Come to dinner," he said suddenly, the demand so unexpected it left her speechless. Bring the dog. We'll talk. But this wasn't just about a dog anymore. Unbeknownst to Emma, Alexander's investigators had uncovered something explosive. Her missing father hadn't just walked out on his family. He'd been involved with the same shadowy figures Alexander had spent a decade dismantling. The coincidence was too glaring to ignore. Was Emma a pawn? A plant? Or was this the universe's idea of a cruel joke, dangling the one woman who might unravel him in front of his carefully guarded heart? The more he tried to rationalize it, the more the lines blurred. And when Emma, against her better judgment, found herself seated across from him in a private dining room later that night, the electricity between them was undeniable. The way Lucky curled at her feet instead of his only deepened the mystery. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Midway through their tense, charged conversation, Alexander's phone buzzed with a message that turned his blood to ice. A single photo, Emma's apartment, ransacked. A scrawled note. Asterisk, you should have paid the debt, Graves. Asterisk, his head snapped up, his mask of control slipping for the first time. Asterisk, when was the last time you spoke to your father? Asterisk, he demanded, his voice rough with urgency. Emma recoiled as if struck. How did he know about that? The pieces were moving too fast now, the game escalating beyond either of their control. Because someone else was pulling strings, someone who'd been waiting for this moment. Waiting for Alexander to care about something enough to use it against him. And Emma? She was no longer just a kind stranger. She was leverage. The stakes had just exploded into something darker, more dangerous. Outside the restaurant windows, the city lights blurred as rain sheeted down, mirroring the chaos unfolding between them. Alexander's jaw tightened as he made a decision that would change everything. You're not safe, he said, tossing his napkin onto the table. Asterisk, either you come with me tonight, or they'll come for you. And I can't promise I'll get to you in time. Asterisk, Emma's mind raced. Who were they? What debt was he talking about? And why did part of her, against all logic, asterisk trust asterisk him? The dog whined, sensing the shift, his tail thumping nervously against her leg. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen watchers tracked their every move. The night was far from over. And the real storm? It was only just beginning. Emma's breath hitched as Alexander's words sank in. Asterisk, they'll come for you. Asterisk, the world outside the restaurant windows seemed to blur into a haze of rain and neon lights, the weight of his warning pressing down on her like a physical force. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the night with Lucky and never look back. But something in Alexander's eyes, a raw, unguarded desperation she hadn't seen before, made her hesitate. This wasn't the cold, calculating billionaire from their first encounter. This was a man on the edge, his carefully constructed walls crumbling in real time. Before she could respond, his hand closed around her wrist, his grip firm but not painful. We don't have time, he muttered, already steering her toward a private elevator hidden behind a nondescript door. The last thing she saw before the doors slid shut was the flicker of movement in the alley outside, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness, watching. What followed was a whirlwind of chaos and revelation. Alexander's penthouse was a fortress of sleek marble and floor-to-ceiling windows, but the opulence did little to ease the tension crackling between them. As security teams scrambled and phones buzzed with urgent updates, the truth finally spilled out in fractured pieces. Emma's father hadn't just abandoned his family. He'd been caught in a web of dangerous deals with a rival conglomerate, one that had long sought to destroy Alexander's empire. The debt wasn't financial. It was blood. A life owed. And now, with Emma unwittingly pulled into the crosshairs, the enemy had found the perfect weapon to strike at Alexander's weakest point. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Her act of kindness in saving Lucky had set off a chain reaction she could never have foreseen. But the real twist came when Alexander, his voice stripped of its usual authority, admitted the one thing he'd never planned to say. I knew who you were the moment I saw you, he confessed, his gaze locked onto hers. Asterisk, not because of your father. Because of her. Asterisk, a single photograph slid across the table. A younger Alexander, his sister, and a golden retriever puppy. Emma's breath caught. The resemblance was unmistakable. His sister, the woman whose loss had hollowed him out, had the same smile, the same stubborn glint in her eyes. She would have loved you, he said quietly, the words hanging between them like a confession. In that moment, the last of Emma's resistance shattered. This wasn't just about danger or debt or even Lucky anymore. It was about two broken souls colliding in the most unexpected way, each carrying pieces the other needed to heal. The climax erupted in a heart-stopping confrontation when their enemies made their move. Masked figures breached the penthouse, guns drawn, but Alexander was ready. What they hadn't counted on was Emma. Her quick thinking, her refusal to cower. As chaos erupted, she grabbed Lucky and a fire extinguisher, creating enough diversion for Alexander's security to regain control. In the aftermath, as sirens wailed and the threat was neutralized, Alexander pulled her into a crushing embrace, his voice rough against her ear. You're insane, he breathed. Asterisk, and I've never admired anyone more. Asterisk, the kiss that followed was inevitable, a collision of relief and adrenaline and something deeper, something that had been building since the moment their paths crossed. The resolution came not with a grand gesture, but with quiet understanding. Alexander used his influence to clear her father's name, exposing the corruption that had torn their lives apart. Emma, in turn, brought light back into his world, not as a replacement for what he'd lost, but as a reminder that love could come when least expected. And Lucky? He became the glue that held them together, a living symbol of second chances. The final twist? The dog had been the one to choose her that rainy night, slipping his leash and bolting toward Emma as if he'd known she'd be the one to mend his owner's heart all along. As the credits roll on their story, one thing is clear. Sometimes, fate doesn't just knock, it sends a golden retriever to crash into your life and change everything.